is complete freedom. Ki joy.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bhalava Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Bhalava Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Bhalava Girivanadhari Gopi Jana Bhalava Girivanadhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Nana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Bonachari Yamuna Tira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrakacharya Astadata Satasisi Mad Abhay Charnar Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrakacharya Astadata Satasisi Mad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinata Syamakunda Radhakundi Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavandam ki jai. Shri Mayapurdam ki jai. Jagannath Puridam ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Siguru and Sigaranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I worship Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is being served by all his devotees and associates, whose hair is bound with strings of pearls, on whose moon-like face is the nectar of his gentle smile. His beautiful golden body is covered with lovely garments and various shining ornaments. He is so charming, being absorbed as he is in the enjoyment of sweet mellows and dancing, and is more splendid in his dress than even Cupid himself. May that Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachidevi, be transcendently situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant spiritual knowledge of the mellow of his taste of his service. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Madhya Lila, Caitanya Caritamrita, canto, I guess, or you're not saying canto, chapter 1, text number 95. So the meter is a little awkward here because the syllables don't quite fit. So we'll see if we can make it happen. Mata Bhakta Ganera Tahan Karila Milana. Sarva Samadana Kadi Kaila Naila Drigamana. Sarva Samadana Kadi Kaila Nira Ladrigamana. Somehow they have to rhyme, so you have to kind of squeeze in that syllable there. Mata Bhakta Ganera Gatahan Karila Milana. Sarva Samadana Kadi Kaila Nila Digamana. Sarva Samadana Kadi Kaila Nila Drigamana. Anybody like to have a go of Bengali? Mata Bhakta Ganera Tahan Karila Milana. Sarvagantamadana Kadi Kaila Niradi Kamana. Bhakta Ganera Tahan Karila Milana. Sarva Samadana Kadi Kaila Nada Kamana. Any ladies? Makta Ganana Tahan Karila Milana. Sarva Samadana Kadi Kaila Niladri Kamana. Anybody else? Mata, the mother. Bhakta Ganera of the devotees. Tahan, in place. Karila, did. Milana, meeting. Sarva, all. Samadhana, adjustments. Kadi, executing. Kaila, did. Niladigamana, going to Jagannath Puri. Translation. At the house of Advaita Prabhu, he met his mother as well as all the devotees from Mayapur. He adjusted everything and then went to Jagannath Puri. Please repeat. At the house of Advaita Prabhu, he met his mother as well as all the devotees from Mayapur. He adjusted everything and then went to Jagannath Puri. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu knew very well that his acceptance of sannyas was a thunderbolt for his mother. He therefore called for his mother and the devotees from Mayapur, and by the arrangement of Sri Advaita Acharya, he met them for the last time after his acceptance of sannyas. His mother was overwhelmed with grief when she saw that he was clean-shaven. Mother Sachi was pacified by all the devotees, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked her to cook for him because he was very hungry, not having taken anything for 3 days. His mother immediately agreed, and forgetting everything else, she cooked for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during all the days she was at the house of Sri Advaita Prabhu. Then after a few days, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested his mother's permission to go to Jagannath Puri. At his mother's request, he made Jagannath Puri his headquarters after his acceptance of sannyas. Thus, everything was adjusted, and with his mother's permission, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu proceeded towards Jagannath Puri. So I'll give a little background to this verse for those of you who may not have been able to follow the story, because we only do Caitanya Caritamrita on the weekends, and so it's very easy to lose the thread if you're not reading at home. So this chapter is entitled The Later Pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. And we have been given only one verse from this whole chapter to discuss, so it does need a little bit of background. So this Caitanya Caritamrita book is entitled Madhya Leela, which means, maybe someone could sort the child out who's making, I can't hear myself think because there's so much chatter there. So maybe you can take your son a little bit away so that I can hear and others can also hear this text. So this chapter, this book is entitled Madhya, which literally means middle. And the word Leela means pastime or play or activities. So this book that we're reading from today is about the activities of the middle part or middle section of Lord Chaitanya's life while he was living in his manifest form on the earth planet. And as Vaishnavas or Bhakti Yogis here in the Hare Krishna movement, we refer to the Lord's activities as pastimes because we understand that he did not appear in this world as a result of some kind of karmic reaction, but that he chose to descend on the material platform to save or rescue humanity from a life forgetful of their eternal spiritual identity as members of the Lord's spiritual body. So basically, all of us have taken birth in this material world because we over-identified ourselves with our bodily designations. For example, our birth family, our gender, our race, our social class, our culture, our nation, and our minds, which is a place filled with our mundane thoughts, our feelings, and our desires. So due to our over-identification with those external temporary forms, we have taken birth. But Lord Chaitanya came here by choice. He was on a mission. So our true and lasting identity is that we are eternal spiritual beings having a human experience. And so forgetting that our true identity is that we are eternal forms of what we call Sat Chit Ananda, a wisdom and joy eternally. That's who we are when we're situated in our true spiritual self. So because we are at our essence eternally parts and parcels of God, it is our natural duty to assist the Lord in his mission, to reawaken the forgetful souls of their eternal relationship with the Lord. So this phrase is used, that we are parts and parcels of God. It's a very old term that most people don't use anymore, but Prabhupada he had learned British English, so he was speaking that way. But it actually means and indicates that we are part of God, his transcendent spiritual body, but also we are parcels, if you can think of a package or a vessel of God, because God is the source of life or living energy or spirit that's present in our hearts and the hearts of all living beings. So these middle or Madhya writings describe the Lord's activities in his first 24 years of life. He actually lived a total of 48 years, but the first 24 years he lived the life of a householder. He was living at home with his mother Sachi and his wife Lakshmi Priya, who died early in their marriage from a snake bite. And after Lakshmi Priya died, to please his mother, who encouraged him to remarry, he took a second wife named Vishnu Priya. But very soon after that, he left home and took sannyas, the renounced order of life. So Lord Chaitanya lived for, as I said, a total of 48 years, 24 as a householder, and then another 18 years, which constitute his middle and later pastimes. So we are just beginning the middle part of his life activities. After he took sannyas, Lord Chaitanya traveled all over India and preached the glories of the holy name for 6 years, and then he sat down in Jagannath Puri for his remaining 18 years of life. So this Jagannath Puri temple, for those of you who are not familiar, is considered to be the oldest Hindu temple in the world. And the town that grew up around the temple, anytime you have a temple, gradually people come and make shops and they live and they go to the temple and they live in the shade of the temple. So this huge Jagannath Puri temple evolved a town, and that town is also called Jagannath Puri. And even today, people travel from all over the globe for this yearly Ratha Yatra festival, where a huge cart is made for each of the three deities, Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram, who we do not have here on our altar, but we do have a festival every year on this farm where we have the Rath Yatra cart that we are carrying from the river down there all the way up here, and then we have a wonderful festival to honor Lord Chaitanya's Rath Yatra festival. So this verse of today is the last meeting that Lord Chaitanya had with his mother and all his devotees from Mayapur after taking sannyas. So again, those of you who are not familiar, Mayapur is the Lord's birthplace in West Bengal, which is about 3 hours outside of Calcutta. And Mayapur is now considered the headquarters of the Hare Krishna movement. And so similar to the time of Lord Chaitanya, when his devotees would spend 4 months of a year at Jagannath Puri chanting and dancing and hearing about Krishna, many ISKCON devotees from all over the world, they travel to Mayapur, particularly in the months of Kartik, between October and November, and also in February, March, leading up to the time of Lord Chaitanya's birth celebration. So some people actually come to Mayapur 2 months in the fall and 2 months in the spring for these two major gatherings and celebrations to simply absorb themselves in hearing and chanting and dancing and having fellowship with other devotees. So this tradition has been started way back in the 15th century when Lord Chaitanya was on the planet. So according to this verse, the Lord was staying at the home of Advaita Acharya Prabhu, who is one of the 5 personalities that make up what is known as the Pancha Tattva, or the 5 tattvas, which means the 5 aspects or truths of God. Looking for a picture. Well, you have this picture of people dancing in that large picture. The front 5, who are the most prominent, are the Pancha Tattva. There might be another picture, but I don't see one. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it is accepted that 5 primary features of God were incarnated or manifested on earth as 5 people in the late 15th century, and they are Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar Pandit, and Srivas Thakur. Chaitanya Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur. And so these 5 famous personalities spread the Hare Krishna mantra and the process of devotional service or bhakti yoga throughout India. And then the Lord was staying at the home of Advaita Acharya, who is one of the 5 expansions of God. And if you can see in this picture, he's the one who has the long gray hair. I don't know if it's very easy to see. It's probably in one of the books. In the Caitanya Caritamrita, it says, I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is non-different from his features as a devotee, Chaitanya, devotional incarnation, Nityananda, devotional manifestation, Advaita, pure devotee, Srivasa, devotional energy, Gadadhar. So that's in Adi Lila, the first volume of Caitanya Caritamrita. It's explained elsewhere in the Caitanya Caritamrita that Advaita Acharya was responsible for the advent of Lord Chaitanya because he prayed for several months, crying out and worshiping the Lord in his form as Shalagram Shila, offering tulsi leaves and Ganges water while begging the Lord to descend to this world to save people from their growing materialistic attitudes, behaviors, and goals, which he believed would lead to their unhappy and dysfunctional lives. And certainly we see that is true today. And so after the end of 13 months, during an eclipse of the full moon, Advaita's prayers were answered when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born. Advaita Acharya was also the first person to proclaim that Lord Chaitanya was none other than God himself. So here we are in this verse, Advaita Acharya's home, where Lord Chaitanya is meeting for the last time his mother Sachi Devi, and after taking sannyas, and before he leaves to travel around India, preaching Krishna consciousness, then finally settling in the temple town of Jagannath Puri. So as described in this verse, the Lord understood that his taking sannyas was a thunderbolt, that Mother Sachi, she experienced seeing him with a shaved head in sannyas clothing like a thunderbolt piercing her heart. It was actually a very devastating moment for his mother because it would be the last time she would see him now that he had taken sannyas. And naturally, she was very overwhelmed with grief when she saw the Lord dressed as a sannyasi. For her, it was like the Lord had died. If you can imagine as a mother or a parent, seeing your son or daughter for the last time, how painful that would be. Sannyas is the 4th order of life according to Varna Ashrama system. It's a social order that is very, very ancient, and it involves a deliberate and complete detachment from the material world. And this includes a person giving up all property, family responsibilities, and social status. People typically take the vow of sannyas to allow themselves the freedom from the demands of life, like earning a living, maintaining a home and family members, and spending rather maximum time absorbing themselves in traveling, teaching, and practicing spiritual discipline. It's not meant to be relieved of worldly responsibilities to travel around visiting beautiful vacation spots or having an ongoing holiday. It's work. It's actually being dedicated to and absorbed in studying the scriptures, preaching, teaching, and writing in order to raise humanity's awareness about their true identity as God's servants. So when a man takes the vow of sannyas, because he is considered to be socially or civilly, Prabhupada uses the term civilly dead, their wife becomes a civil widow without connection with her former husband. And the sannyasi is understood to have died to everything connected to his former life and family responsibilities. So this meant he no longer could provide protection for his mother or wife Vishnupriya, which in India at that time was a woman's only support. It's still very much followed this notion that a woman needs to be protected by her father as a young child and as a youth, and then by her husband in marriage, and then as a older person by her adult son or children. So by this time, Chaitanya's father, Jagadat Misra, had died already. And his elder brother, he had an elder brother, he also had taken sannyas a few years before this. So Mother Sati was already a widow, just because her husband had died. And then her other son took sannyas, so she was already kind of a widow, but she had then Lord Chaitanya, but now that he was taking sannyas, it really made her very alone. She didn't really have anyone else. She had this new young wife who had not been married to her son very long, and the two of them were kind of left in their own little living facility with no real income. You know, in the Indian ancient Vedic culture, women didn't develop a marketable skill. They had no income. They were completely dependent on their family members to care for them. So now their family members are gone. If you read more and more in the Caitanya Caritamrita, you will see that the devotees do take care of her. And Advaita Acharya, whose home she is now in, do look after her. So it's not such a horrible thing. But at least it was heartbreaking. That is definitely for sure. So not only was Mother Sati going to miss having the physical association of her son, she was also being left in a very vulnerable and precarious situation as an unprotected woman. So Mother Sati, she was really overwhelmed with grief to see the Lord dressed in sannyas clothes and with a shaven head, and obviously, as I've said already, it symbolizes his renunciation. So it really also reminded her of her other son who had taken sannyas, and that was very painful for her, and also reminded her of the loss of her husband who had died. And in counseling profession, you would call that compounded grief, where you have one loss stacking on another loss and another loss, and if those losses are not processed and reconciled, one can end up with a very deep sense of pain and numbness and shock. So I can't imagine how hard this must have been, having a son who was the Supreme Lord himself, and certainly she had taken shelter of him, how hard that was for her to see, even to think of being separated from him. So while they were in Advaita Acharya's home, the Lord was very aware of the pain that he was causing his mother by taking sannyas. And for that reason, he asked his mother to cook for him while she was in the home of Advaita Acharya, saying that he'd been very hungry, having not eaten anything for 3 days. So although the Lord's hunger might have been a real fact, that may be why he asked her to cook for him, in the true meaning of his asking his mother to cook for him was to give her a sense of connection to him, to solace her grief. He understood out of his compassion that he needed to do something to help her feel a sense of connection and to console her grief. It might be interesting to know that cooking for another person in love and devotion is probably the most intimate service a person can do for another person, because the consciousness of the cook enters into that food. So if a person cooks something in love and devotion and offers it to another person in love and devotion, it not only enters the receiver of the food's body, but it also touches them through the heart. So this is why for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, cooking food that's vegetarian, that's all coming from scratch. You're not offering canned food, you're cooking food in a meditation. Even from cutting the vegetables, you're meditating on the Lord and how you will glorify the Lord and please the Lord with your devotional cooking, but also giving it to others. It's a sacred service, because even if people do not acknowledge or know that this food has been invested with love and devotion, they will feel that the spiritual energy is in that food. So the Lord, he wanted Mother Sachi to realize that she could continue to have a deeply spiritual relationship with him simply by cooking for him in love. And this was an excellent diversion for Mother Sachi, who then gave up her lamentation and became completely absorbed in cooking for the Lord while he was staying at Advaita Acharya's home. I remember when my godsister Hemavati, who I've lost touch with since many years, her wife, the wife of Hansaduta, who died, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, had a miscarriage. And when she came home from the hospital, Srila Prabhupada instructed her to sew the very first outfits or set of dresses for the Jagannath deities in the United States. And although she was completely devastated after the loss of her child, she stayed up all night sewing these first dresses for Jagannath, absorbing her mind in the Lord's service. Now, as a grief specialist myself, I probably would never ask a person to do that. That would just not be in my radar. However, I see the logic of the Lord and Srila Prabhupada in helping a grieving person find solace by absorbing their mind in Krishna's service as a means of raising their mind to a transcendental consciousness. So to use that grief and through meditation by sewing or by cooking, engaging in some activity is incredibly healing for a person who's suffered a loss. We also see in the Srimad Bhagavatam the story of Arjuna's devastation after learning that Lord Krishna had left this mortal world. He was in so much grief and despair that he could no longer even hold his bow, this bow and arrow. He just could not even pick it up. And he'd lost all strength because he became so overwhelmed with grief. He was slipping as he walked. He was falling down. His body was shaking. It was just too hard for him to even think practically. And so as he went back home after leaving Dwarka and learning that Krishna had left the planet, and there was all kinds of very strange things happening to the earth, inauspicious signs were manifesting, that he suspected that something inauspicious was happening. And of course, when he found out that Lord Krishna had left this world, he could understand that these were the signs that Kali Yuga was actually going to start because Krishna had left this planet. But anyway, when he got back home, his elder brother started to ask him questions about why he was so in despair. And obviously his demeanor was very sullen. And he told him that Krishna had left the planet and he could hardly bear it, the separation. And so as he sat there in his grief, talking to his brother Yudhisthira, he started to recount Krishna's activities, remembering all the times they had together as not only cousins, but then when he surrendered to him as his spiritual master, the adventures they had, being on the battlefield where Krishna was driving his chariot, and so many things. And remembering his name and his form and his qualities and activities, he realized that the Lord was eternally present for him in the form of sound. He noticed that just by remembering the Lord and the pastimes and his name and thinking about him, his heart started to find happiness again. He started to recover from his deep sense of grief. So I find this very instructive for all of us, because this is the process of Bhakti Yoga. This is exactly what we're doing here, 500 years later, trying to absorb our minds in remembering Krishna's name, form, qualities, and activities. So if we do this, we will never feel separation from the Lord or his devotees, because in Kali Yuga, God manifests himself through sound vibration. So we simply have to hear about him, speak about him, chant his holy name, read literature that tells stories of his activities in this world, like we're doing now. We're telling a story. Then naturally we will want to serve the Lord by assisting him in his mission to reawaken forgetful souls. So this involves, Rupa Goswami and Lord Caitanya, they devised these 9 processes of devotional service. If we engage in all 9 processes, or even just one of these 9 processes, everyone can engage in the Bhakti Yoga process. So before I go on, who knows what these 9 processes of devotional service are? Anybody can name them? Hearing, okay. And what? Chanting. And what else? Remembering. What else? Something before that, if you're going to go in order. Yeah, remembering. And then serving the Lord's lotus feet. Deity worship. Doesn't say it here, but okay. I'm sure that's part of it too. Praying. Yeah. Okay, praying. Executing orders. I'm just reading the English, so not executing orders, serving the Lord as a friend, and complete surrender to the Lord. So these are really good to have in our mind, but people may not do all these things. But if you do just one of those things, just sit down and hear. You're practicing Bhakti Yoga. Hearing and chanting is a really good thing to do together, because if you're chanting, you're also hearing. If you're hearing and chanting, you're also remembering, so you already have 3. And just by hearing, chanting, and remembering, and understanding and getting to know the Lord, then you naturally want to serve him. I mean, it's hard to love someone you don't know, which is why reading these books, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Caitanya Charitamrita, you start to fall in love with this person who's the source of my life, who's in my heart, and you want to serve. So these processes they all go very nicely together. So the Lord stayed in the home of Advaita Acharya for many days, and he was talking to Advaita and all his devotees during the day, and discussing whatever, discussing Krishna consciousness, maybe some practical aspects of sharing Krishna consciousness. It's hard to imagine what they were talking about, but they were just hanging out all day and breaking for breakfast, breaking for lunch. And then in the evening, there would be lots of chanting and dancing, and people would be dancing and chanting in ecstasy through the night. You can get a glimpse into that, because we do this right here. What was going on 500 years ago, we're doing here. At our festivals, we do these when everybody gathers. That's what we're doing for hours, sometimes for many hours, sometimes for 12 hours. We're sitting together in this room, packed in and outside, just singing. And eventually our spirits get so enlivened that we experience the joy of who we are eternally. So after some days of this, chanting and dancing and associating and sharing prasadam, the Lord gathered everybody together. And he said, "My dear friends, as long as I remain manifest, I shall never give you up." Here he's getting ready to depart after he's taken sannyas, but now he's telling them, "I will never give you up, nor shall I be able to give up my mother," who's now thinking he's leaving forever. So he's saying something very strange here. I'm not going to be able to give up my mother either. But after accepting sannyas, a sannyasi should not remain at his birthplace surrounded by relatives. So please make some arrangement so that I may not have to leave you. And at the same time, people may not blame me for remaining at home after taking sannyas. So it's considered that a sannyasi who simply sits at home after taking sannyas is kind of disgraceful. There's no point taking sannyas if you're going to still live in the home. Because the order of sannyas is meant for traveling and preaching without the comforts of home. So anyone who's traveled constantly knows that it's quite austere to travel all the time. I used to travel out of India for 3 years to Russia and Germany and the Eastern Europe. It was not easy. You know, every 4 days you're in a new home. Sometimes you're sleeping in all kinds of strange places. There's noises, there's lumpy beds, there's not enough covers, you know. The food that you're being served may not be the kind of food that you can eat because you have health issues, but you're grateful for having it. It is not easy to travel all the time. So this is one reason when we have traveling sannyasis, you want to offer them the best comfortable situation you can, because just traveling disturbs the life airs. You know, you catch all kinds of illnesses. You're traveling on planes. And so, you know, we really do need to offer them the best of what we have to create comfort so that they have the energy to talk to us about their own realizations of Krishna consciousness. So then all the devotees, they went and approached Mother Sachi with this Lord's request to make some arrangement so that he may not leave her in a way that people would not blame him for remaining at home after taking sannyas. So they got to thinking, okay, it's kind of an oxymoron. How can we do a both and rather than an either or here? And so Mother Sachi says this: it will be a great happiness for me if Nimai, which is the name she called him, his childhood name was Nimai, because he was born under a neem tree. It would be great if he could, for him to stay here in Navadvip, which is the birthplace of Lord Caitanya in Mayapur. But at the same time, if someone blames him, it will be my greatest unhappiness. If people make fun of him or laugh at him for being a sannyasi who stays home with his mom, you know, I would break my heart for people to make fun of him and to shame him. And so her proposal was, let Nimai live at Jagannath Puri, and then he will not leave any of us. And at the same time, he can still remain aloof as a sannyasi. And since Jagannath Puri and Navadvip are so close, I can get news of Nimai frequently. So I do not care for my personal happiness, but only for his happiness. Indeed, I accept his happiness as my happiness. So it's interesting that she says that Navadvip is not so far away from Jagannath Puri. Well, I've been to both of those places, and in order to go from Navadvip to Jagannath, you need to be on an overnight train. It's not like, you know, going to Murwillumbah. It's a pretty significant distance. And in those days, there were no cars, there were no planes, there were no trains even. People walked from Navadvip to Mayapur, and that took at least a month. So in her mind, that's close. But similar to how we do things today, you know, devotees are all the time from all over the world going to Mayapur or Vrindavan, you know, and so back and forth, you can carry things to each other. You know, can you buy me this? Can you bring me that? When you see so-and-so in Mayapur, can you tell them that? You know, you have always this communication. And if you go to these festivals in Mayapur and Vrindavan, you get to know a significant number of people internationally. You know, you now have friends practically in every country. You could go anywhere and find a couch to sleep on, you know, because you know so many devotees. So this is kind of what was going on in Lord Chaitanya's time. But I think it's kind of interesting that she thought it was kind of close. And so Srila Prabhupada comments on these words of Mother Sachi, her proposal, in his purport. He says, Mother Sachi gave the example for all mothers whose sons turn to genuine spiritual life. It is a great happiness for a mother if her son does not leave home to search out Krishna, but remains with her. At the same time, if a son does not search after Krishna, but remains at home, he is blamed by experienced saintly persons. Such blame certainly causes great unhappiness for a mother. If a mother wants her son to progress spiritually, she should allow him to go out searching for Krishna. But if she does not allow her son to search for Krishna, she is called Ma, which indicates Maya, illusion. By allowing her son to become a sannyasi and search for Krishna, Sachi Mata instructs all mothers of the world. She indicates that all sons should become devotees of Krishna and should not stay at home under the care of an affectionate mother. So, except for the 6 years when the Lord toured South India, Lord Chaitanya stayed in Jagannath Puri for the remaining 24 years of his life. Basically, it was 18. And every year the devotees would come and visit the Lord, and they would bring cooked food from Mother Sachi from Navadvip. Now, without refrigeration, that sounds also a little bit, in a month you're carrying food for Lord Chaitanya. But since I've been cooking, I was a cook for the devotees for 30 years, so when I lived in India, I did investigate, what kind of food are you packing without refrigeration? And there's a way to preserve food through oils and frying and sugars. And even today, we get a little Mahaprasad from Jagannath Puri and Mayapur, these Jagannath tongues that are so sweet. They're fried and totally dunked in this sugar water, and they petrify them. They're like pickles, you can eat them, and they're not rotten. So back in the day, people knew how to preserve food. So the way that Mother Sachi stayed connected to Lord Chaitanya is he would send her food from Jagannath Puri, and she would send food back from her, and in this way they had this sweet relationship. She got to hear when people would come from Jagannath Puri, they would tell all about everything they did while they were with the Lord for 4 months, and then she would then send the news. And interestingly enough, in the ancient times, I did a study in terms of Jesus in those lost years, and apparently, when he went dark in the Bible, he went through the Silk Road searching for the answers of life at the age of 13, ends up in India, and actually there's a record of him having gone to the Jagannath Puri temple. But that's how, instead of newspapers, that's how people communicated from the east to the west. You had caravans, people traveling who were news reporters on caravans, and they would bring the news from India and Afghanistan, and as they went through the Silk Road picking up the news, and when they got over to Israel and the Middle East, they would share the news. You'd have to pay them. Okay, give me a few paisa and I'll tell you the news of what's happening, and then they'd travel back and tell the news that way. So I thought that was interesting that also in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, they understood that we can communicate without newspapers and cell phones and televisions and all of that. So I'm going to stop here because we have about 6 minutes time. I know Prasadam is in 8:30, but I thought maybe if somebody has a reflection of some insight that they got just now from all that they've heard, they'd like to share something they're taking away, or maybe a question you have. Anything. Sadhana, I can depend on you for a question. Yeah. I know. Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah. Yeah, it is Kali Yuga, and so much has been lost. This is where education comes in. Even in India, you will find in Vrindavan huge widows' ashrams where they are basically, even though they have family, they've all gone to Delhi and they've gotten software engineering and all of that. They want to make money, but their mom, she gets a little social security check from the Indian government. They will have the audacity to come to her in a widow's ashram and demand that money for themselves. Yeah. So there's a lot of abuse going on there too. It is Kali Yuga. People are very much focused on taking and not very thoughtful about giving and taking responsibility for duties. Part of that too is in the Western education system that most of us have been socialized in. We are taught that rugged individualism, me first, that's kind of what we're taught in school. You know, it doesn't matter what the world says, you have to do your thing. So the Hare Krishna movement's meant to be an alternative to that. We're meant to be trying to live gradually a Vedic life. And so our community here is our tribe. They're our surrogate family because our birth families often, they fall short. They're busy doing whatever they do, but if you want to take to spiritual life and do it in a very serious way, you need the association of other like-minded people. And your family may be in a totally different place, and they're not interested until they have a crisis at middle age. Maybe they get cancer, or they've lost their job, or their wife dies, or their husband dies. Then they start to think about what you might have taught them as children, but don't count on it. So in my view, our community is our tribe. That's our family. And there's so many people who have family members who are estranged. They have rejected them because they have taken up spiritual life and they don't want to, they would want them like Prahlad Maharaj. You need to go and make tons of money so you can take care of me when I'm old, and that's kind of threatening if now you say, I want to be just a poor, simple devotee. So many parents will estrange themselves. So I just say we have to make this community our family. And for all the complications that happen in a family, you know, you have Uncle Bob who's an alcoholic, and you have, you know, Aunt Mabel who's got schizophrenia or whatever it is. We've got all those problems in our community too. But if we're committed, and there's a covenant that we make in entering a community like this, is a kind of a commitment to support one another. This is our support system. So we are really obliged. You may like each other or not. You may not have chosen each other to live with. I certainly might have chosen different people to live with if I were not living here, you know. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? I'm not sure, you know what I'm saying? But because our centerpiece, our goal of life is the same, then we need to transcend those externals and hold fast, because there's just nothing more valuable than a person who's dedicated their life to Krishna. Even they're crazy, lazy, whatever they are. If they love Krishna, they're my friend. I love them because they love Krishna. Yeah. Okay, 2 minutes. Anything else? Insight? Something? What? Yeah. 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 Totally. Krishna is much more pleased by serving his devotees than to serve him directly. So you're right, and Lord Caitanya and Srila Prabhupada came to the West to try to dispel this impersonalism and voidism, which we see everywhere. And sadly, it's in our movement too, because we are conditioned from that, and very often that gets mixed up with philosophy, and so we can also misuse the philosophy to justify impersonal dealings, or we're too busy, or projects over people, and all of that. Yeah. Uh-oh, sadhana, you've got 30 seconds. Well, but you have to understand, Krishna is also in the heart of all living beings. Prabhupada says that, you know, Krishna's in our hearts. So it's actually higher. This is great, because Krishna's we're learning how do we serve Krishna. Actually, we should be serving one another the way we serve the deity. You know, we come and we knock before we come in the temple. Why do we do that? You wonder why we ring a bell when we come in. Why do we knock before we go? Because it's a respect, a boundary. You're not just barging into someone's private living quarters, right? So there's a training of learning how to deal with a person, not only a mundane person, but a supreme person who's in the heart of every being. So if you're going to talk about serving Krishna, you've got to think of Krishna in every atom. That includes animals and plants. How do we treat the plants? How do we treat other living beings? So that's all of that. Yes, if we serve Krishna, then everybody's satisfied, and that includes everything, not just deity worship. Okay, it's time for breakfast. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.